I Trocadero you to ignore the history of the Trocadero. But first I'm going to tell you to... I don't even remember what I wrote here. First I'm going to tell you the history of La Boheme. I need, like, when you have your bar mitzvah, when you're reading from the Torah, there's, like, accent marks that tell you how you're supposed to sing it. That's what I need on my notes when I'm writing.
You need to have a piece of sheet music with you.
Yeah. Hang on, let me cue up the orchestra. Okay, so it starts in one of the places I just mentioned, those 4 Georgian Revival buildings built by Francis Montgomery that eventually became Sunset Plaza. So they were designed by Edwin Bergstrom, those buildings, who also did the Roslyn Hotel and the LA Athletic Club, which is really nice.
Is really nice, yeah.
Not to be confused with George Edwin Bergstrom, who designed the Pentagon, like I confused the two when I freaked out for 5 minutes as if I had just uncovered the story of the century. I was so excited.
Guys, has anyone connected the dots on this?
Hang on. They opened on September 11th.
You can't melt steel.
Wasn't there an actor's name whose name was Steele?
A pornography star.
Yeah, that must be what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Can't melt his steel.
The
building at 8614 Sunset, at first, this was just an old roadhouse place to get food, but in January 1927, it reopened as a place called Cafe La Boheme. It was owned by a former opera singer named Joe Borgia, and it became one of the first clubs on the Strip that functioned as a speakeasy for the stars. It was one of the first ones. Like I said, this area drew in all the celebrities who wanted to have fun outside the law of LA, and La Boheme soon became known as the Rendezvous of the Stars.
All 8 of them.
Yeah. We've got all of your stars. Lillian Gish, Lon Chaney Sr., Lillian Gish.
The other Gish. We've got Mary Pickford. We've got Douglas Fairbanks and a bunch of other people who've held microphones over them.
We've got that guy whose all copies of his movies were melted down to turn into bullets during the war. It could hold around 350 people, this place, but in 1932 they closed but quickly reopened as Club La Boheme now. But now there was a new guy involved.
We don't serve coffee anymore.
We serve clubs. But now there was a new guy involved who was way more interesting than the whole last iteration. This second version is more interesting.
Give his name some drama.
Some places said that this guy was the new owner. Others that he was just the performer who opened the place up after the revamping. But either way, he bears mentioning. George Francis Peduzzi.
I thought you were going to say another name.
Billy Wilkerson.
Don't ruin it.
No, this was before Billy Wilkerson. So this is George Francis Peduzzi. Born June 13th, 1897 in Baltimore. He eventually made his way up to New York and in May 1919 did his first performance in what we now call drag.
Oh, okay.
So he was an early drag performer.
Cool.
This was a time in New York where something called the pansy craze was happening, where people were just like obsessed with gay clubs and gay performers and
gay lifestyle.
Kind of like now, like it's not that it's ever really ended, but now like drag is a really big thing. It was like the original sort of mania for everyone wants to go see a drag show, gay or straight, whatever. So Peduzzi got in just at the right time for the pansy craze and hit it big with his stage persona, Carol Norman. That's what he went by.
I bet that name was Pretty Fly back in the day, and everybody got it. Like, oh, I get it. That's a pun on another name, but that person's dead, and we don't know.
Their film reels were all melted down. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if, like, it just sounds like an old lady's name at this point.
It does. It sounds a little, yeah. It's got the same rhythm as Carol Lombard.
He did one particular impression, but he was a star on the Orpheum circuit and had a big show called Glorifying the American Boy Girl.
Cool.
And he also wrote his own songs and had a great voice that was described as lusty masculine.
Like Leonard Cohen.
Yeah. My favorite drag performer, Leonard Cohen. I'm trying to think of a drag version of Leonard Cohen's name.
Let her
Cohen. His right-hand woman was his mom, who made all of his dresses and traveled to all of his shows with him. He became something of an alternative star, and because of his predilection towards Southern songs and his unfortunate history of minstrel shows, he got the moniker of the Creole Belle or the Creole Fashion Plate, which, again, I don't know what that's like a reference to. The Creole Fashion Plate? What does that mean?
I don't know.
I do know that what this means. Groucho Marx used to make fun of him by calling him the queer old-fashioned plate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't even sound good when he zings it.
Let me have Groucho Marx's drag name, Groucho Stretch Marx.
That's pretty good. Come back to me in 30 minutes. I'll work on it. Just like keep talking.
I'll be ignoring you and only thinking about Groucho Marx. He eventually made his way to Hollywood, where we're talking about the Creole Fashion Plate now. He made his way to Hollywood, where he used to perform on shows with Milton Berle.
Oh, wow.
To which Berle's mom warned him to stay away from the homosexual. Unfortunately, unfortunately for a guy like Berle, it was hard to stay away from anything.
Can't help it.
And Milton Berle's, he didn't need a drag name. He was the drag.
Did you ever do... Oh, we did watch, when we were at Ed's house, the I Love Lucy episode where he does drag.
I feel like he did it all the time.
Probably.
It's better when the Creole fashion plate does it.
I'm a bigger fan of when Bugs Bunny does it. I think it's pretty cool.
Bugs Honey. So on September 21st, 1932, La Boheme was now either owned by Carol Norman or just open to a long engagement by Carol Norman, like as the main performer.
Yeah, as the house actor.
Yeah, and he was a huge hit. He was famous for doing a Joan Crawford impression.
Oh, okay.
Which he got to do in front of Joan Crawford.
Get out. Back when that was a thing.
She approved it. Yeah, isn't that so weird?
Yeah. I'm going to do my Buster Keaton impersonation.
I'm going to do my Buster and my Keaton. Yeah, my Buster Keaton impression in front of Buster Keaton.
Yeah.
It's just two people staring at each other, sadly.
Love it.
He also had a backup dancer named Laverde, who was described as doing a mean rumba and is plenty of hot cha when it comes to appearance.
Oh.
So I'm starting to wonder, I wonder if some of these reviewers knew that these were men or not.
I'm sure that was sold that way. It had to be.
I don't know.
It had to be.
I wasn't there.
Hey, no. I mean, I'm not, you know.
That's why they call me Daniel Never Explores Sexuality. So La Boheme ended up becoming one of the first bars on the Strip to cater to the gay community. But even in this lawless part of town, there were still some crackdowns, and in early 1934, the place was raided. One place described it as a gun battle.
Oh, jeez.
But I think it was just a raid, and it closed for good. It reopened briefly on June 6, 1934, as a place called Chateau Trianon, but that didn't last, which leads us to the main event. Prohibition was recently over, and the building that used to be La Boheme was recently empty, and the morals of a one, drum roll, Mr. Billy Wilkerson.
Billy
Wilkerson.
Wilkerson, big dick himself.
His morals were even more empty than the empty La Boheme.
What makes you empty? When your dad sends you into crippling debt?
You'll get into him a little bit more, but remember that this is the guy who ran the Hollywood Reporter. We covered that in the magazine episode. Wilkerson, spoiler alert, had been doing some bootlegging during Prohibition,
right.
And now that it was over, he had all this champagne that he didn't know what to do with from actual Champagne region. When you drink it in the actual Sunset Strip region, oh, mwah, 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 mwah. He didn't know what to do with all this champagne, so he decided to buy the old La Boheme building as a storage space for all of his champagne. Like, that's how much champagne he had.
Jeez.
But with so much primo real estate for a bootlegger's leftover inventory of champagne, he thought, why not bootleg some people in here to drink said champagne? Yeah. So he decided he was going to turn this place back into a club for glamorous people to enjoy. But what do glamorous people like? French things. So he decided to redo the place with a new French theme. And to do this, he hired George Vernon Russell, who also did the expansion of the Natural History Museum in LA, and would go on to do the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas also. And he hired Harold Grieve, who is an art director in early Hollywood who had done The Thief of Baghdad, among a lot of other things. So the inside was completely redone with chandeliers and striped silk chairs and satin couches and the Paris skyline painted on the walls. Dog poo everywhere, all over the flue.
And that's part of the decor. You've been to France, right?
Hang on. I used to live in France.
I used to live in France and drink warm beverages with no ice.
It's called water. There was
the stuff I wash my car with?
We wash our cars with champagne in France. That's why it's so good. Mamma mia.
Mamma mia, which is...
I told you I lived in France. There was the French grill in this place and the main dining room that was painted cream and gold, complete with padded walls and a shiny dance floor and a bandstand. There was the Starlight Veranda patio that overlooked Hollywood, and there was also the Sidewalk Cafe outside, which may have been the first place in LA to offer al fresco dining.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
It's funny to be in LA where the air makes you healthy and you're like, I want to be inside. Outside
not
on a
anymore.
Beautiful day. Well, I mean, if you don't do it now, how are people going to see you eating? You're not going to get discovered.
Since all the actors can't go to open mics anymore, they're all eating al fresco.
Since the actors can't sing at open mics anymore.
So the best way I can describe this place is sumptuous. So now that it was all designed, it was time to open, and what better way for Mr. Showbiz, corrupt Billy Wilkerson, to do this than by bribing and blackmailing David O. Selznick's brother to throw a private party there.
Wow. You're going to have a party, see? And it's going to have champagne.
Or else everybody's going to know. You voted for women's rights to vote.
Please no.
This was either September 17th or 18th, 1934, and it was a huge to-do and is considered the creation of the Sunset Strip as we know it. This opening night, this party. So this was the opening of Cafe Trocadero, or the Troc, as it came to be known. And the address was now 8610 Sunset Boulevard in the heart of the Sunset Strip. It went off great, but the problem was the popularity of this place dropped off immediately the next day because they weren't being blackmailed to go there. It was just a flash in the pan, so Wilkerson needed to do something to create allure and make people want to come here. So, of course...
So he shot all calendars. That way people didn't know what day it was. Therefore, the party's still going on.
This party will never end. Lock the doors. So, of course, Wilkerson started it off with some trickery. He decided that he would keep the front doors closed. I wasn't wrong. And everybody gets chained up. Call into your brother now, Mr. O'Salesman.
And you don't go home until you drink all the champagne and give me $50,000.
So he closed all the doors and he put velvet ropes along the sidewalk leading up to it as if some huge exclusive event was about to happen.
Right.
And apparently this was the first place to ever do that. To put up velvet ropes to make it seem like it's a, oh my God, this shoe store must be really important.
Oh, yeah.
On top of that, they told anybody who called them that they were fully booked for 2 weeks. And within days, people were lining up to get in and the place was packed from then on.
These social experiments. I saw a mule there the other day. Oh, I gotta go.
I hear they put down fresh gravel on the road.
You know that joke about two rabbis that walk into a bar? This is the bar. I gotta go. I have to be there.
Are the rabbis still there? Are they hiring? Side note, this may have been the place that invented doggy bags for leftover food also.
Really?
Yeah.
Is there a story there?
Not very glamorous. No, there's no story. Well, one time,
Cary Grant didn't finish his beef stroganoff.
So the Trocadero had two things going for it. The first was that it was on the Sunset Strip.
Right.
That meant it fell out of LA law, so they weren't subject to the blue laws in LA, which forbade dancing on Saturday nights.
Right.
So you could Lindy hop on over to the Troc and cut a rug until your grandma told you an old saying that doesn't make sense anymore.
Yeah.
So the second thing was Wilkerson. Like we covered, he ran the Hollywood Reporter, so what he thought of you could make you or destroy you, or he could do both if he wanted to. And since he wanted the Trocadero to be a high-class celebrity-focused place, it benefited both parties to get on each other's good sides. So stars could come to the Trocadero like Wilkerson wanted, and in doing so, they would be pretty much guaranteed to get a mention in the gossip pages of the Hollywood Reporter, which they wanted.
It's like showing up to the last day of school just to be seen that you showed up to make a good, like, I don't want to be here, you don't want to be here, but if you just...
It's a real scratch your back, I'll write about how itchy your back is situation.
That's a less good way to put it, but okay.
Well, mine made sense. He had special tables set aside for the top of the A-list and also for PR people. What it really was it was an extension of the star-making machine that the Hollywood Reporter was a major piece in. The studio would pick someone to be a star, set them up on a fake date with someone else they picked to be a star, send them to the Trocadero, get mentioned in the Hollywood Reporter. People read the Hollywood Reporter to hear about it. Then people go see their movies because they read about them in the Hollywood Reporter. Repeat, doggy bag. I'll take my check in the car. Jack Benny said... Jack Benny.
The patron saint of touching your face? Touching your own face.
And your friend's face.
Yeah.
Said dining at the Troc was better than paying an expensive publicist. You go there and you're going to get publicity.
You're going to get seen and your name's going to get in the paper and then your career has 3 more months to live.
Yeah.
You're extended 3 more months.
Yeah, that giant house you bought in San Luis Obispo, you can afford it for another week.
Yeah, another week.
And this was one of those places that, again, it's useless to name all the celebrities who ate there because they all ate there.
They all ate there.
But here we go. Fred Astaire, Lucy and Desi, Cary Grant, Bing Crosby, Lana Turner, Tyrone Power, Jean Harlow. This is the class of celebrity that you could expect to find there any Saturday night. There's not too many pictures of it that still exist, but it was used in the 1937 version of A Star is Born and also The Thin Man. They'd always go
really?
Yeah, they even sell Nick and Nora at the Cafe Trocadero cocktail glasses online.
Really?
That was like the bar of The Thin Man.
I gotta go to that place. That doesn't exist anymore.
I gotta go down to Sunset Plaza.
Yeah.
Just inside the Sunset Strip. This place in its prime was one of the hottest places in town to eat and drink and gossip and dance.
Yeah.
It was as glamorous as Hollywood ever was. Their food wasn't great, but they were known for their Trocadero cooler drink. That was their signature drink.
Whatever.
Heroin. Regular people and tourists ate here too, but at night it would cost you $18, which today is about $300 to have a night at the Trocadero. Yeah.
It's so funny that you said $18 and I knew okay, this is before Andy Griffith.
$18 today? No.
Very true. I was trying to think of a park or a speeding ticket in Mayberry is $10 and you're like, oh my God. And people are like, $10.
He's going to lose the farm. A cheaper alternative with a different atmosphere, though, was their downstairs bar. Wilkerson set it
dungeon?
up.
It was called that, right? The dungeon?
The kinky dungeon? Left over from the La Boheme days?
Down here, doggy bags being something else.
We do doggy everything down here. Wilkerson set it up because Norma Shearer complained that there should be a place where paparazzi and the press weren't allowed in.
Oh, okay.
So celebrities could have a less conspicuous night downstairs in the bar, which became Little Troc on Sunset.
That's cute.
It was designed as as an American colonial sort of tavern with brass and wood. It was more of like a cozy, casual place. However, the Trocadero did have its own in-house photographer who was allowed everywhere. His name was Jaime Fink, and he was literally everywhere at all times. Like you'd go to like blow your nose, and oh my God, Cary Grant blows his nose.
Is he one of those people that like there's a portrait of an old president and the eyes come out and then Fink is in there like, oh boy, oh jeez.
You think that's a leftover stroganoff in your doggy bag? It's Fink.
It's a camera.
It's Fink's camera.
It's a small camera.
It's Fink's saucy camera. People would joke that when they go home, they check under their beds to make sure that Fink wasn't there.
It's pretty funny. A lot of times he was, though. That's the problem.
He kind
of wasn't a joke.
He ended up in jail for life. Another big draw at the Trocadero was their Sunday amateur hour shows, which was originally, speaking of open mics, which was originally put on as a way to get around the laws against drinking and dancing on Sundays. So like, well, they're dancing on stage on a Sunday. And they're not drinking.
Performance. They're not.
Yeah. They're not drinking. They're praying. They trot out amateurs, open mic style, and if Wilkerson didn't like you, he'd yell, "Get the hook and pull that son of a bitch off the stage."
Wow.
But it grew into a pretty big deal that was attended by a bunch of talent agents. Some of the people whose careers got boosted here: Rita Hayworth, Nat King Cole, Phil Silvers, who isn't one of our Patreon people. He'll appreciate that joke. Jackie Gleason, and Judy Garland.
Oh, all right.
They were all early performers at the amateur hour here before they were stars.
Did Judy Garland start there early in her career? Did you cover that in the Garland episode?
Maybe.
Okay. I don't remember what we did like 2 months ago. So
when did we talk about Judy? Who's Judy Garland? I just know Judy Rainbow, the dog I rescued. In just the first 3 years, this place took in $3.8 million. But of course...
Back then, that was $18.
Once you hit a tipping point and it folds back in on itself. But it's not real money if it's not from the money region of Sunset Strip. Of course, Wilkerson just couldn't un-Wilkerson himself.
This man, from my limited knowledge of this guy, is... Go ahead.
Yeah, he's everybody and himself's worst enemy.
He's spy versus spy, but they're one person.
He was
spy versus I.
That's my drag name. He was a man of many vices. I wrote he was a manny of many vices.
He was a man of many vices.
He was a manny of Manny Pacquiao. He was a man of many vices except communism. And gambling was one of his.
Maybe the biggest.
Yeah, probably the biggest. Bootlegging and gambling.
I'd say he bootlegged so he can get money to gamble.
Bootlegging, which is a form of gambling with the law. On Saturday nights in the back room, he ran one of the highest stakes poker games I could ever imagine. In regular attendance, Carl Lemley, Irving Thalberg, Daryl Zanuck, and Sam Goldwyn were playing poker with each other weekly.
Just that they're gambling away their catalog of women.
Yeah.
I'll give you all the blondes my studio owns.
Yeah.
For one night with Eddie Mannix.
For one night with Tyrone Power. And with all this gambling and vice that went on the strip, of course, came the mob men.
Yeah.
Wilkerson, spoiler alert, was connected, so regulars...
Close quote.
Close quote. End recording. So regulars at the Trocadero were people like, of course, Bugsy Siegel, Mickey Cohen, Willie Byoff, Tony the Hat Cornero, and
the hat with his gambling ships,
and an East Coast guy named Johnny Rosselli.
He's a guy I bring up a little bit.
I don't know if you covered this. The legend says he was hired by the government to kill Fidel Castro, but was convinced by Castro in Cuba to kill JFK instead.
Whoa, I didn't know.
So people think he killed JFK.
Wow. Bugsy Siegel, to remind everybody, almost shot Goebbels.
That's right.
And somebody had to talk him down, and it was not anything related to Nazism or anti-Semitism. He just did not like the guy. He's like, I think I'm going to break his neck.
Imagine if these LA gangsters took down Fidel Castro and Joseph Goebbels. Like, they brought down communism and not imagine.
And they were gangsters.
Yeah.
And they were guys who just carried Tommy guns to, like, the bakery.
It didn't take long before Wilkerson was in some serious debt to these guys, and he wanted out of the Trocadero. The guy he went to, I think you probably dips into you, Nola Hahn.
Yeah, Nola Hahn. Just a little bit.
He was another mob guy who became known for running the Club Continental, which was a casino in Glendale that used to be a speakeasy called Airport Gardens. We're an aerospace company.
Like a kid just named two things. It's like, he's cute. Let's just call it Airport Gardens.
He came up with systems of watching over gamblers to make sure nobody was cheating that included the concept of a pit boss, and his way of doing things are basically the way casinos are run now to prevent cheating.
I get into it just like a sentence, but like Wilkerson and Hahn.
Yeah, they created...
Because of Vegas.
Yeah. He also happened to be running the gambling aspects of the Trocadero, and eventually pretty much all the gambling that happened on the Sunset Strip was done under under his supervision. He's the one who made the Sunset Strip Las Vegas before there was a Las Vegas.
Right.
So Wilkerson was being extorted by the mob, and he went to Hahn for help, who's also in the mob. Why would you go? Who suggests
It's like a pyramid scheme. Like, I'm also being extorted, but I have to extort from you. So, well, yeah.
I'm a smaller brick in the wall. He suggested that insurance money from a fire would be the only way he could get out of this situation.
It's cartoonishly dumb, but effective. I got a crazy idea.
Not long after this, a fire started in the kitchen of the Trocadero and gutted the whole place, and Wilkerson was out of the Trocadero.
Dude, just leave. Oh, yeah. Okay.
The man, you can't just leave.
Yeah, 'cause
he
you'll
needed
get-
money.
you'll-
If you just leave, you don't get insurance money.
Yeah, you got to be driving a nice little wheelchair for the rest of your life.
The man that Wilkerson sold the Trocadero to? Nola Hahn. So, May 18th, 1938, the Trocadero reopened under the ownership of Nola Hahn, and part of Wilkerson's conditions for the sale that he and his family could eat there for free whenever they wanted and have food delivered to his mom's house.
Cool. Him and I think a lot alike. Oh, if only I owned this Popeyes.
I could eat
here
Popeyes
for
forever.
free. Yeah, and I could have it delivered to my mom's house.
The singer at this reopening was Mary Martin, who went on to originate the lead roles in both South Pacific and The Sound of Music on Broadway.
Wow, really?
She was Maria and whoever, Nellie?
Da-da-da-da-da-da. Maria. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Maria. Am I doing musicals right?
I think you're singing like a Sesame Street song and then yelling some sort of West Side Story lyric after it.
It's not a Sesame Strong. Sesame
Strong.
Street Strong.
So-
It's America from West Side Story, but instead of saying America, I'm saying Mary. Mary.
Maria.
Maria.
Hahn didn't last long, and after some Vice crackdowns that year, in December, they closed down again for a remodel, I think paid for by Siegel and Cohen, into a more modern, sleek style, and they reopened May 11, 1939, now under the ownership of a guy who wasn't a mobster, but was as close as you'll get while not committing crimes, Felix Young. Do you get into it?
No, I don't know him.
Hang on. World War I is beginning.
Oh, they're delivering my cocaine from Colombia.
Oh no, they're crashing into the jungle. He was a musical producer in New York, but by 1933, he was in Hollywood putting on Felix Young's Tattletales when he got hired by Columbia to be a production supervisor. He was also an unstoppable gambler who would often gamble with B.P. Schulberg, who was head of Paramount and also the dad of Bud Schulberg.
Oh, okay.
So Young had a habit of borrowing money from Schulberg to open up businesses so often that Schulberg just made him an associate producer at Paramount to have an excuse to pay him. He said that Young could sweet talk a cardinal out of his red hat. Explain that Christian joke to me.
See, a cardinal is a type of bird.
See, a cardinal's a baseball player, and they wear these red hats when they play baseball. He was also in and out of the Lincoln Heights jail often.
Okay, the haunted Lincoln Heights jail.
Yeah, haunted by him every Friday night after he punched a sheriff not knowing. He only lasted until October of that year before problems with the lease forced them to close. During the legal proceedings, he walked into one of the lawyer's offices and started punching and choking the lawyer and threatened to call the mob on him, which is the last person you want to do.
Maybe
that
the last
to.
person you want to do that to. Admit that there's a mob.
Yeah, never admit that there's a mob to a lawyer. He got a $50 fine and a year's probation. In December of that year, the club was bought by a band leader named Abe Lyman for $10,000, but it was like, 35 cents?
Yeah.
How many hamburger dinners can I get for that? But within a month, it was owned by John Steinberg, not Steinbeck, and hosted the after party for the premiere of Gone with the Wind.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In the year 1940, they were raided twice for gambling, and by that spring, they were bankrupt. And on May 13th, all the furniture was auctioned off and the interior was stripped. But the Trocadero isn't the sort of place that just dies quietly. Much like most of the men that have been whacked by the owners, they do not die quietly. In late January 1942, Young reopened a smaller Little Troc at 9263 Sunset, and the opening performer for that club was a young unknown named Lena Horne.
Oh my God.
Who
really?
packed houses every night, and within 4 months she was signed by MGM and on her way to becoming a star.
Damn.
But the original building sat vacant for 3 years and was being considered as the site for the Academy of Motion Pictures Art and Sciences Museum, which still isn't built. But in June 1943 it got new life again when it reopened on April 21st, 1943 as the Trocadero, but quickly closed again and reopened again August 4th, 1943 under the ownership of a Latin band leader named Eddie LeBaron, who was actually Eduardo Gastin, who made it more of a Latin music club called Eddie LeBaron's Trocadero, and that was a hit. But LeBaron got drafted for World War II, and his brother sold it to George Goldie, who was, you guessed it, a mobster.
Okay.
A few interesting moments from this era of Trocadero history. They were accused of violating wartime food ration laws in February 1945.
I gotta have these biscuits. I gotta have this cornbread. I simply must.
This loaf of bread has more than 20% actual bread in it. They were accused of selling liquor after hours in July 1946. Spike Jones had a residency there in March 1946, and for a while it was managed by the husband of the mom from Leave It to Beaver.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, but the strip was changing, and Trocadero couldn't really keep up. In 1944, they even made a movie called Trocadero to try to get their buzz back. Didn't work. In October 1946, the Chip Corporation took over and spent $45,000 redecorating it and signing Carmen Miranda for an exclusive engagement there. But the Copacabana in New York City sued her for breaching their contract with her.
Ricky Ricardo sued her?
Litigious Ricardo. And it never happened, and the club fell apart this time for good because of Ricky Ricardo. And that's
because of fictional character Ricky Ricardo.
In a fictionalized version of a real club.
Real lawsuit.
So they closed forever in early 1947 and were demolished and made into a nice empty lot for decades.